I'm the Count, and welcome to Count's Corner. This is my corner, and today we're going to be talking about this game here. This game, Spider-Man for the PS4, and we're going to be talking about how it overcomes the trappings of its rather generic open world. Let's be clear from the offset. I love Spider-Man and the world that it creates. I'm saying this now to avoid the comments telling me otherwise when I say this game's open world is generic by the standards to which we judge these things. To contextualise this, I'll take you back to around 5 years ago. The gaming world has become bored of its current staple, the first-person shooter. A staple in this instance is like a default setting, something a developer or publisher commissions when they want to produce a new product, but lack any innovative ideas, so make something that's popular at the time. 5 years ago, like I said, that was the shooter, and from about then until roughly last year, it was the open world game. Although now, of course, it seems to be the Battle Royale. Thanks, PUBG. Now, before you leap down my throat for calling open world games a genre, I know they're not. However, due to the nature of an open world game of almost any genre, they end up sharing a number of elements, some of which you may be able to guess already by their infamy. For example, the much reviled radio tower, or similar equivalents, where the map remains unknown to you until you manage to find and activate a beacon of some description. Or how about the lists of various collectibles? Or maybe the mini-challenges found in the world to test your skills so far? Or the bases of enemies to clear out? These could perhaps be called strongholds of some description. You could also swap that out with district clearing, maybe. Oh, and do you remember the game where you find characters in the world in a situation and you can choose to offer your help to them or not? Oh yeah, there's quite a lot of those, isn't there? Here's the thing though. All the examples that I have just given of what 5 years of being the staple has done to the open world game, you'd probably consider at least one of those ideas on that list a bit old and tired. But guess what? Every single one of the ideas that I have just mentioned is present in Spider-Man. However, none of them felt tired, except maybe the radio towers, but that's probably due to the rather deserved reputation as the yardstick of lazy game building. Anyway, with all this in mind, what does Spider-Man do differently to make all of these things feel not boring? One of the main selling points of Spider-Man is the web swinging and in general the way the wall crawler can move around the environment. This is realised amazingly in the game, perhaps the best it has ever been in any Spider-Man game. The only other game can come close to this, in fact, is the 2004 Spider-Man for the PS2 and GameCube, which was, until this year, considered the yardstick to measure all Spider-Man games against. The 2018 game improves on basically every aspect of this, with web swinging becoming the primary focus of the game. Each swing you make in the game feels natural and fluid because it is controlled directly by the player, from the initial webbing of a nearby building or tree to the trajectory and release of the swing. It's combined together at the perfect balance point of being simple to do but requiring skill to do well. You can mess up your swings and ruin your momentum, or find yourself stuck to the wall of a skyscraper you couldn't avoid, but this is never something that takes away from the experience, because even though the game gives you a fair amount of leeway with the swinging, any fuck-ups you make are A, down to your own ineptitude, and B, not impossible to recover from. A couple of times in the dock area, for instance, I found myself in the water because I mistimed a button press and couldn't web onto anything. However, there are almost always something within my reach from the water to web to and continue with relatively little time lost. Also, as I have just alluded to, you can't web swing from anywhere. To make a web swing, there needs to be a surface for the web to grab onto, or the swing simply won't happen. This has been the downfall of many Spider-Man games that were far too afraid to do something like this, probably because they thought it would interfere with the flow, which is just simply not true here. And to do anything else can very easily break a player's immersion in the world. The environment is mapped out perfectly though for this aspect of the game, with plenty of tall buildings and vantage points that allow you to swing almost anywhere. The only exception to this is Central Park, where you have to keep low and web onto trees. To reflect that though, there is relatively little to do in Central Park, because, when developing, Insomniac knew that to have players coming back to a section that requires more skill and finesse with swinging frequently could put some players off the game. To bring us back to the main point, let's compare this movement system to other open world games. In those with a non-contemporary setting, in the past, you have walking, running, maybe a horse or some other similar way to get around a little bit quicker. Those with a contemporary setting have cars instead of horses to fill this purpose, and sci-fi games have spaceships or futuristic car analogues. No matter the game, this is an almost universal truth, and a lot of games have a fast travel system of some sort to speed this process along even further, because it can get a bit dull after a while. Spider-Man, though, is the game with the most unique and different movement system when compared to its contemporaries, and it shows. It does have a fast travel system, but if it weren't for the one time I was forced to do it, I wouldn't know that it was there, because swinging around the world never got boring for me while playing. As we've established, Spider-Man does share a lot in common with other games when it comes to side activities. What Spider-Man does to differentiate itself from the pack is to make most of the side activities tied to the movement, but in different ways. For instance, the Taskmaster missions are all time trials that test your speed and reflexes. The backpacks are all hidden in non-obvious spots that require a little bit of hunting for. Some of them are like up on a building wall, some of them are behind bridges and in really obscure places that aren't just on the floor there for you to collect. And a lot of the research stations are more concerned with precision and skillful web swinging. The possible exceptions to this in regards to the side missions are Black Cat cameras and the strongholds, the latter of which are mostly combat-based, but a lot of elements in the game's combat are centered around your ability to move around the combat area to take down enemies the best. Tying this all back together then, the thing that really sets Spider-Man apart from its contemporaries is the movement system and the importance placed on it throughout the game, which mingles into every nook and cranny of it. The way it has been implemented and placed so front and centre is exactly what transforms the now generic and ubiquitous elements that make up its world feel just the opposite. A lesson that other developers could stand to learn from this game is that for an open world to not feel formulaic, you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater and replace everything, nor should you just sit in a nice, lovely comfort zone and make just a mediocre game, but have those elements underpinned by something truly unique and that'll make them feel fresh and different. And maybe, if they listen to that, we wouldn't have so many open world games that are so similar and a little bit boring.